In Britain, our hard-won right to protest is under threat. On Saturday the 18th of January, the Metropolitan Police arrested upwards of 70 anti-war activists in London during the first national demonstration for Palestine of 2025. Among those charged with public order offences were the demonstration's chief steward, Chris Nineham, and the director of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, Ben Jamal. Both Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell were interviewed by the police under caution in the following days. This clampdown on our democratic life, which comes with the explicit support of the Home Office, is part of a broader trend which seeks to target all those engaged in confrontation with the British state. Only last year, Britain's trade unions, already subject to the most restrictive labour law in Europe, saw off a determined campaign by the Conservative government to restrict their right to strike. Last July, 5 climate activists were sentenced to upwards of 4 years in prison for simply planning a protest via Zoom. And on Saturday, one woman wearing a keffiyeh was arrested by the police for arriving at the demonstration too early. Gradually, successive British governments have accelerated a coordinated campaign of civic repression to demobilise mass political expression and limit the agency of the British public. Using the long arm of the state to minimise popular dissent, Keir Starmer and his government hope to quell popular confrontation with their leadership, just as they did inside the Labour Party after taking over in 2020. If the periodic and organised intrusions of the British public into the political sphere can be constrained, then that sphere will remain exclusively the domain of the government's wealthy allies. There's a class dimension to this repression, of course. It's no coincidence that Lord Walney, the government's independent advisor on political violence and disruption, is simultaneously a paid lobbyist for the arms industry who advocates for the proscription of organisations like Palestine Action. Far from wiping 14 years of draconian Tory anti-protest law from the statute book, the new Labour government has weaponised bills like the Public Order Act of 2023 to police expressions of solidarity with Palestine. But why the anti-war movement? What is it in particular about successive mobilisations in solidarity with Palestine that has so irked Britain's political class? Undeterred by Suella Braverman's slander, the mainstream media's vilification, or the police's threats, the Palestine Solidarity movement retained a historic rate and scale of mobilisation as Israel's genocide unfolded. Within weeks, this popular outrage swept away the feeble arguments of politicians who time and again denied the legitimacy of the movement's central demand for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Through the prism of Palestine, the anti-war movement illustrated that the interests of British imperialism sat out with the remit of representative democracy, out of step with the British public, yet materially tied to Israel's crimes in Gaza. 2 weeks ago, Downing Street escalated its repression of the protest movement that continues to give voice and political expression to this alienation. But importantly, this repression does not stop at the border. Last July saw 10 activists arrested outside of the Tales weapons factory in Glasgow by Police Scotland. 2 months later, on the very same day that the Scottish Government pledged to cease all meetings with representatives of the State of Israel, 5 activists with Palestine Action were sentenced to between 12 and 14 months in prison. It seems that Tony Benn was correct. Every generation will indeed fight the same battles again and again, because, once again, it is high time to defend our right to protest across these islands.